Donald Trump is losing it on New Year's Eve, as it has been uncovered that there are now 5 million missing Epstein records from the Epstein files that have not been turned over to the DOJ. If you've been watching the MeidasTouch network, we predicted that it was going to be between 5 and 10 million records. I still think the number will look more like 10 and 20 million records. Here's the report this morning from the New York Times confirming that the Justice Department is now said to be reviewing 5.2 million pages of the Epstein files. The number represents a more precise and potentially much larger figure than already estimated. The department is seeking to enlist about 400 lawyers to help in the review, and the DOJ says maybe it will be done at the end of January. You will recall the post that we made at the MeidasTouch network back on December 23rd when we were reviewing the small fraction of documents that were turned over. I wrote the following: this email from the Epstein SDNY prosecutors, that's the Southern District of New York federal prosecutors, back in 2020 suggests that there are approximately 1.2 million records being imaged in just this one hard drive. There are likely other hard drives as well. I would not be surprised if there are actually tens of millions of records. And based on my prior experience being a litigator and handling large document productions, it made sense to me that there would be 5, 10, 15 million records, not documents or pages, but records, which could be tens of millions of underlying pages. And so when the Department of Justice the day before Christmas wrote, the United States Southern District prosecutors just let us know that there were 1 million records. That was after our initial report. I was saying, well, I still think it's tens of millions of records. And it turns out that we were right. There's also another report from the Wall Street Journal that just came out that it wasn't that Epstein was just a frequent visitor at Mar-a-Lago and the Mar-a-Lago spa, where he would expose himself to the masseuses and to the spa attendants at Mar-a-Lago. But what Mar-a-Lago would do during the 1990s is they would send the young girls, the spa attendants, the masseuses, to Epstein's house, which was 1.5 miles or 2 miles away. And they would send the young girls to Epstein. And then Epstein would expose himself, and there are instances where he sexually assaulted them, and he would sexually harass them. And that developed a big reputation of what was happening at Mar-a-Lago. People knew about this, and eventually it was said that, Trump told Epstein, well, maybe don't come to the spa anymore. But I'm not really sure that even happened as well. But let's just talk about what the witnesses talked about. Were saying at the time. This is from a Wall Street Journal article that just dropped. Just a reminder, make sure you hit subscribe to the MeidasTouch YouTube channel. We're on our way to 6 million subscribers, and subscribe to the MeidasTouch podcast on audio as well. Here's what the Wall Street Journal wrote. Jeffrey Epstein wasn't just a frequent visitor to Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago club in the late 90s and the early 2000s. The club was sending its spa employees, usually young women, to Epstein's nearby mansion for massages, manicures, and other spa services, according to a former Mar-a-Lago and Epstein employees, multiple. The house calls went on for years, even as spa employees warned each other about Epstein, who was known among staff for being sexually suggestive and exposing himself during the appointments. Let's just call it what it is, Wall Street Journal. Sexually assaulting these girls who were sent from Mar-a-Lago to give Epstein massages. That's what was taking place. These are what former Mar-a-Lago employees were saying. Then it talks about how Marla Maples, Trump's second wife, didn't like what Epstein was doing, and she was warning Donald Trump about it, but Trump didn't care. And it talks about how Trump's friendship with Epstein outlived the second marriage. Epstein developed this reputation, and massage therapists who worked at Mar-a-Lago in the late 90s and early 2000s recalled asking managers why Epstein couldn't just come to the spa anymore, as they talked about sending someone 2 miles away to his house. The bosses told her that Epstein preferred spa services in the privacy of his own home, and then warned the employee that Epstein sometimes exposed himself during massages. And as you know, in 2000, Virginia Giuffre, an underage girl, was sent to Epstein's home. Remember, Ghislaine Maxwell went to Mar-a-Lago. They sent Giuffre to Epstein's home. Then Epstein sex trafficked her around the world, and she since has died by suicide in a very, very just unthinkable tragedy. We're also learning this morning just how creepy Donald Trump is with everything, how addled he is, how bizarre and deranged he is. New New York Times expose regarding Donald Trump's failed promise that he would end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours, while only making things worse. It recounts the incident after Donald Trump rolled out the red carpet for Vladimir Putin and made American soldiers go down on their knees like dogs while Putin stood above them. One of the most disgraceful images in American history, something that Russia will be showing for the rest of their history, when America went down on its knees like dogs for them because Donald Trump is a Putin bootlicker. So shameful as an American to see that. I don't know how any American could be supportive of what Donald Trump's doing. We're just seeing that image right there. But so then after the Alaska meeting between Donald Trump and Putin, you had the European leaders and Zelensky go to the Oval Office. And all Donald Trump wanted to talk about was how pretty Ukrainian women are. And he wanted to tell Zelensky, Ukrainian women are the most beautiful women ever. And he says that my friend, Phil Rufin, this casino magnate who who was part of the Trump business venture in Vegas, the Trump Tower in Vegas, or Trump Hotel and condos in Vegas. He married Miss Ukraine 2004. I introduced them together. I was his best man. Ukrainian women are so beautiful. Can I put her on the phone? Let me put her on the phone with you. And that's all Donald Trump wanted to talk about. Zelensky turned the tables on Donald Trump and had this, human connection with Miss Ukraine 2004 about why her parents stayed in Odessa and didn't flee during the war, and how important Ukraine is to the Ukrainian people and the strong national identity. So actually backfired in Donald Trump's face when he was being creepy like that. But that's what he wanted to talk about. Trump would remark that he owned Miss Universe. Ukrainian contestants, he said, were the most beautiful. Ukrainian women are beautiful. Zelensky goes, I know, I married one. Trump explained that his friend Phil Rufin married a former Miss Ukraine, Alexandra Nokolenko, and then he got her on the phone to speak to Zelensky. Here's a photo of her, Alexandra, right there. Here's Alexandra and Phil Rufin right there. And by the way, Phil Rufin was interviewed frequently when Trump was running the first time, and he would say, all these girls would throw themselves at Donald Trump, and they'd all want to touch him. All the girls from these pageants wanted to touch Donald, but he would leave right on time when every girl wanted to touch him. Watch what Rufin said. I have the interview. Let's pull it up right here.
My wife had the Miss Universe franchise for the Ukraine. So we'd sit with Donald on 3 chairs, everyone for 12 years. They'd have this pageant, 100 of the most beautiful women in the world. It ends, we go to the spin room, and the girls flock around it. They want to touch him. They want autographs.
Now, we don't want to get any women in trouble here.
No, I don't know. But Donald does all that, and he treats them so nice. He treats them courteously. And then guess what he does? An hour later, he leaves, goes right home.
Yeah. It is.
Now, this morning also, Donald Trump is making posts that he wishes that the Republican district attorney and the governor of Colorado rot in hell. He says, free Tina Peters, and I want them to rot in hell, is what Donald Trump's post is. That Donald Trump vetoed a clean water bill that was unanimously passed in the House and the Senate to deliver clean drinking water to 50,000 people in Colorado. This was, again, a bipartisan bill. It was actually significantly impacting Lauren Boebert's district. And lots of people speculate that in addition to the fact that Donald Trump is retaliating against Colorado because they're not pardoning Tina Peters, who was involved in the election fraud January 6th, trying to overthrow the results of a free and fair election. She was convicted, prosecuted. But Donald Trump wants these insurrectionists all free, but he can't pardon her because it's a state crime, not a federal crime. He gave her a fake pardon, but it's a state crime. Also, Lauren Boebert, as you know, was instrumental in signing the discharge petition to get the Epstein files released. So people believe Trump is trying to kill the people of Colorado, harm them. He has removed lots of federal funding for needed projects in Colorado. And now Donald Trump saying that he wants the governor of Colorado as well as the district attorney to rot in hell. That was his post this morning. A few other things I want to point out as well. We're learning that China is now imposing additional tariffs on imported beef from the United States. So not only is China not buying American soybeans, right, like it claimed it was going to. Remember, Donald Trump's like, Xi Jinping is a friend of mine. He's a friend of mine, and he's going to buy all these soybeans. The deal that Donald Trump said he did a great deal with China was that he said China was going to buy 11.5 million metric tons of soybeans for the end of the year, whereas China bought 27 million metric tons of soybeans under former President Biden. So Trump's idea of a great deal is 16 million metric tons less year over year, which would screw the soybean farmers. But China's not buying the soybeans. Not only that, they're imposing a 55% tariff on imported beef from the U.S. And you know where they're getting beef from? Australia and Brazil and Argentina. That's what they're doing. While America bails out Argentina, that you have to recognize some of these fundamentals shifting across the world, and that's just another example of it. Finally, I want to point this out, and Max Berger does a good job of pointing this out. So the U.S. right now has over 900 billionaires, and their wealth soared by 18% to $6.9 trillion this year, UBS says. So it was a great year for the billionaires. However, was it a great year for everybody else? Absolutely not. This is why they want you to talk about daycare scams, which, by the way, was led by a white lady. Okay, not the Somalians. It was led by a white lady, and then they want to blame all Somalians and say that these are the bad guys. It's the oldest authoritarian trick in the book. It's been done for centuries and centuries and centuries, thousands of years. Divide and conquer, let the rich pillage and take your money while they distract you and make you hate each other. It's as simple as that. And while they engage in their perversions, they're evil perversions, now covering up a child sex trafficking ring. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 6 million. And thank you so much for watching.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.